What if it was late summer and you just gave up on your garden and let nature take control? That is exactly what I did about 2 months ago. I've watered my tomatoes like 3 times and we really haven't had that much rain. I've learned that despite all the garden pests we encounter, that we are in fact the biggest pest of all when it comes to our gardens. I can't even tell you how many times I brought a rototiller through here trying to get a picturesque garden with no weeds, just going between rows. It might look nice in a picture, but I can't eat pictures of my garden. And in a couple days, guess what? Weeds are back, all for nothing. And while you're tilling, you're watching all them earthworms get cut to little pieces, watching all the ground beetles scatter. And if you finally succeed, when you're done, you're patting yourself on the back. Oh look, no more weeds, I pulled all the weeds out. The ground starts to look like someone poured a bag of Quikrete on it. That soil ecosystem had been destroyed. In about a week or so, the weeds start to come back. You fought Mother Nature and lost. Those weeds are just a sign that she's trying to regenerate what we destroyed. Unfortunately, nature works really slow. So when those weeds come up and you bring the tiller out again, we're just starting the whole entire process all over. It's a waste of time for us, and we are also killing our garden ecosystem. We come over here and look at this mess. You got watermelons, squashes, zucchinis, pumpkins, all living in harmony here. And what I did with this space was nothing. I did not care for these plants at all. I have never watered any of these plants. I've got thistles, I've got weeds growing all over the place in here. Just look at these plants. Look at the size of the leaves on this zucchini. And coming in here, look at all these giant fruits that are starting to form on here. I don't think there's been a single female flower in here that has not gotten pollinated. Sometimes you notice your zucchinis and squashes forming and they stay small and they kind of rot and the flower falls off. That is from lack of pollination. Do not have that problem anymore. That was a big problem earlier in the year when I had a cleaner garden space. I've also noticed a lot fewer pests on these plants than I had when I planted them over here originally and kept them clean. You'd think that'd be counterproductive. Usually people don't like putting mulch down and they like to keep the weeds out because they think it gives the bugs a place to hide. But for some reason, I don't know if it's because these plants are just so healthy now or I just have more natural predators. I got a giant orb web spider living in this zucchini plant. She's not out right now, but she's a big one. And then if you go down here and you mix through this mulch, there's like wolf spiders running all over the place. And the frogs too. When I walk around now, I got frogs jumping all over the place. When I was keeping this clean and tilling, there were never any frogs in here. And frogs are good guys for the garden. Check out my bullfrog. He hangs out here every day in the same spot, watching over the raised garden bed. Now, I'm not saying you have to let weeds take over your garden. That's not the point of this. The point of this is basically to have some kind of ground cover to protect the soil. Instead of planting everything in nice clean rows, consider planting different stuff next to each other. Try to block out the sun from any exposed soil. In nature, there is not much exposed soil. When things die, they coat the ground. So we interplant like this. We're blocking out the light. We got leaves that die and fall down. We just leave it all in place and then also add some extra mulching to it. Areas I'm not planting this year, but I will next year. I've just been throwing hay on the ground. And then I have cardboard on top of that to block the weeds out from coming through. Another layer of hay. And then anytime I do want to pull weeds, I take them and toss them right on top of this pile. Some grass clippings, weeds growing around here, carrots planted, no exposed soil. After these past 2 months, I can officially say I am a recovering rototiller addict. I am sold on the idea of regenerative permaculture gardening. There are so many methods of permaculture gardening, but It seems like they all stem from the no-till method. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. No more tilling. The other aspect of permaculture gardening is soil protection. It's heavy mulching. Whether you're going to do a back to Eden style where you cover your whole property in wood chips and grow out of that, if you want to do lasagna gardening, no dig, that is completely up to you. I really like all these methods that people have come up with permaculture gardening, like the back to Eden method, the wood chips. I really like that, how it just keeps the soil so moist and just feeds back into it. But I also realize that in nature, there's so many different types of environments. Like you have prairies, you got forests, you're talking leaves and wood versus grasses. Every different type of matter, when it dies and hits the ground, breaks down and gives different nutrients back to the soil. So I kind of like the idea of combining all these different methods, and that's kind of where my forward ecology gardening method stems at. I mean, right now I have the cardboard out, I have the spent hay just scattered all over the place, I got living weeds growing through there. In the fall, those are going to die, they're going to feed back into the soil. Then all my trees here are going to expel all their leaves on top of this. And then I have tons of wood chips that are composting as we speak that are also going to make their way back in here. So it's a big combination of all these different types of organic matter. They're going to coat this soil, they're going to feed the microorganisms, and in turn they're going to build up soil and retain moisture. And if your soil is built up naturally by all this organic matter rotting on the top, you don't need to fertilize. Every nutrient you need is already in the dirt. If I do end up pulling weeds and stuff and I don't want to toss them on top of the soil or on top of the cardboard, the chickens love them. They turn them into great manure that goes in the compost. The idea here is nothing leaves the garden. And if it does, it comes right back in. Even stuff like thistles that people dig out when they're starting these permaculture gardens, I have those I dug out and I didn't toss them on the surface, but I got them sitting in a 5-gallon bucket full of water. It's going to turn them into this nasty, smelly soup. I'm going to pour those right into the compost. Don't worry about them spreading because they're already broken down. And all those nutrients that they took up from the soil into the plant is going to make its way back in here. When I pick food from my garden and eat it, it gives my body energy to put back into the garden. That is where I'm headed with my forward ecology gardening method. Give more than you take. Gardening should not be stressful. I was spending so much time out here worrying about these plants, fertilizing, tilling, pulling weeds, watering. Quarter acre, way too much work. I'm just trying to grow food out here and have a nice place where I can come out and enjoy myself. Yes, there is some work to be done with permaculture gardening and no-till gardening. You look around, you see all these weeds, and you think that you got to take cardboard and smother them all out. And that's kind of where I've been at. And I realize it's starting to stress me out a little bit, throwing all the organic matter in here and smothering weeds. But then I'm also reminded it is fall now and winter's going to come. And this is just going to be bare ground again. So there's not going to be any weeds here. And that's when nature is going to take over and throw all her organic matter on top of here. So I'm really in no rush to go to some of these overgrown places and start taking these weeds out. I know it's going to get taken care of for me. As I start this process, and I'm just tossing all this hay and stuff in here now and leaving my garden be, it's really fulfilling just watching nature take over and watching all the plants I have thrive. Just knowing I don't have to string out 75 feet of hose every single day to water because my soil was so destroyed. Walking in here and seeing all these cool creatures I know that may call my garden home in the future as long as I don't disturb it. They're going to hibernate under the ground here and they're going to be back next year. Creating an environment that also benefits nature as well as myself. That is awesome. There is a path to a garden that requires less work, and the time to do that starts now, leading into fall, when the season's changing. Get rid of the tiller, start repairing your soil now, because that is the first step. Save the dirt. Thanks for watching.